Good evening, everyone. My name is Alma Alombro, and tonight my task is to discuss to you the chapter 2 of the book, The Schooling and the Politics of the Hidden Curriculum. For the last couple of years, there has been debates that have emerged about the notion of the hidden curriculum. So let's start with the importance of the debates on the hidden curriculum. First, it points at the aspects of school life that link schools to the wider society. Second, it points to the need to generate a new set of categories in which to analyze the function and mechanisms of schooling. According to Giru, he argued that if the concept of the hidden curriculum serves as a valuable theoretical tool for radical educators, it will have to be resituated in a more critical discourse and become more attentive to the mode of critique and social theory developed by the Frankfurt School. The character of the discourse of schooling has been considerably transformed. This is due to the financial cutbacks, the economic recession, and the shrinking job market. And because of that, the progressive and the radical critics of schooling have been reduced to a whisper. And that it also replaced by the rhetoric of cost efficiency experts. And because of that, stakeholders developed curriculum models based on rather narrow principles of control, prediction, and measurement. Because of the changes in political issues translated into problems, the imperatives of critique and negation give way to a mode of thinking. In the 1960s and 1970s, educational reformers were at least able to speak with some impact and says that the youth ought to be educated not for the present but for a better future condition of the human race, and that is the idea for humanity. However, the important business spokespersons such as William Simon and David Packard urge major corporations to provide financial aid to universities and colleges, not based on the academic reputation, but based on whether school departments, institutes, or faculties are sympathetic to the free enterprise system. There is also the increasing industrialization of schooling, and it is obvious in the effort of the major corporations to establish endowed chairs of free enterprise in the number of major universities. And it disregard that this effort display for the condition that safeguard academic freedom is matched only by the messianic fervor of their intent to spread the belief and values of the business community. The issue of withdrawal of resources from the schools and the redefinition of the curriculum watered down pragmatic and instrumental terms that cannot be viewed as problems solely due to demographic shifts in the population and short-term recessional tendencies in the economy. They also use the existing economic crisis to legitimate conservative modes of pedagogy and to silence potential critics. According to Guru, the viable approach for developing a theory of classroom practice has to be based on a theoretical foundation that acknowledges the dialectical interplay of social interest, economic power, and political power. And the school curriculum is actually viewed as socially and politically neutral and reducible to the engineering of discrete behavior. Although there has been a lot of disagreement on that, but at least they agree that schools are now seen as agencies of socializations, and also that education is meant more than providing students with instructional goals and objectives. But also, schools did more than teach students how to read, write, compute, and master content, according to Mehan 1980. And also, school came to be seen as social sites with a dual curriculum. And what are they? It is viewed as the first one is the overt and the formal, which is this these are the stated purposes of school rationales and also the teacher prepared objectives. The second one is it is viewed as hidden and informal. And this comes from the beliefs and values that are tacitly transmitted to social relation through social relations and routines that characterize day-to-day school experiences. There are also concerns with the hidden curriculum provided a starting point for the fundamental questions of what schools actually do. A major benefit deriving from the work on the hidden curriculum was that schools were now seen as political institutions inextricably linked to issues of power and control in the dominant society. Schools is also viewed as black boxes, according to Carabel and Hasley, 1977. And what is black boxes? The black box paradigm ignores the concrete experience of both teachers and students in favor of larger structural analysis concerned with the social achievement and input-output of social distribution. This is also, again, according to Mehan 1979. And the definition of schooling. So, what is the function of schooling? Although there has also been debate on that, but generally, the hidden curriculum theorists agreed that schools process not only knowledge, but people as well. Schools also is seen as social sites that controlled meaning, and also at the same time cultural sites that um, contributed to the formation of personality needs. Not only that, schools mediate between society and the consciousness of individuals. Analysis regarding the purpose, nature, and the consequence of socialization are myriad and complex. There are two terms that are distinct that needs to be defined clearly. These are the ideologies about schools and the ideologies in schools. The first one is it is defined as what schools are for, of how they work, and of what is possible for them to achieve. This is according to Witty 1981. While the ideologies in schools, these are the dispositions, structure, and modes of knowledge, pedagogic relationships, and informal culture that make up the daily character of the school itself. According also to Giroux, there are three important insights that have emerged that are essential to a more comprehensive understanding of the schooling process. The first one is schools cannot be analyzed as institutions removed from the socioeconomic context in which they're situated. The second one, schools are political sites involved in the construction and control of discourse, meaning, and subjectivities. And the last one, the common sense values and beliefs that guide and structure classroom practice are not a priori universals, but social constructions based on specific normative and political assumptions. Now let's go to the perspective on the hidden curriculum. So, what is it? The hidden curriculum is defined as the unstated norms, the values, and beliefs embedded in and transmitted to students through the underlying rules that structure the routines and social relationships in school and classroom life. Also, this is the non academic but educationally significant consequences of schooling that occur systematically but are not made explicit at any level of public rationales for education. This is according to Elizabeth Vallas, 1973. According to her, also, a hidden curriculum refers to broadly social control function of schooling. According to Guru, the analysis of the hidden curriculum gain only theoretical mileage when they move from description to critique. That is, rather than concern themselves merely with an investigation of the social meaning. The hidden curriculum also, according to Guru, the stakeholders, they owe themselves the task of analyzing how the hidden curriculum functions not simply as a vehicle of socialization, but also as an agency of social control, one that functions to provide differential forms of schooling to different classes of students. The divergent analysis on hidden curriculum are deep seated philosophical and ideological perspectives that clash over the very meaning and nature of social reality. He also added that before the concept of hidden curriculum can be used as a theoretical tool for developing a critical pedagogy, it is important to understand the critic and the ideological assumptions embedded in the perspective of the study. Guru introduces in chapter 2 the three basic approaches that needs to be discussed in order to understand fully the framework of the hidden curriculum or the notions of the hidden curriculum. The first one is the traditional approach, the second one is the liberal approach, and the third one is the radical approach. So let's start with the traditional approach. But before that, according to Giro, that each of these approaches contains rather broad theoretical boundaries, and their respective distinctiveness rest with what might be called their problematic. And he defined problematic as a theoretical approaches that refers to questions that govern its mode of social inquiry. And the second one, these are the questions that are not asked and the relationship between them. All of the approaches, according to him, need to be analyzed inevitably. Um, it needs to be analyzed, but it failed to provide the theoretical elements essential for a comprehensive critical pedagogy. So let's start with the traditional approach. The traditional approach starts with the question, what makes the existing society possible? The key assumption that governs its problematic, according to Guru, is that education plays a fundamental role in maintaining the existing society. Sorry. The traditional perspectives. The traditional approach accepts uncritically the existing relationship between schools and the larger society. The approach accepts the dominant societal values and norms and are interested primarily in how they are actually taught in school. The traditional perspectives, they are functionalist. So the proponent of these are Parsons, Driben, and Jackson. They viewed schools as vehicles through which students learn the social norms, values, and skills they required to function and contribute to the existing society. The traditional approach also, the hidden curriculum in traditional approach is explored through social norms and moral beliefs tacitly transmitted through socialization process that structure classroom social relationships. It also accepts uncritically the existing relationship between schools and the larger society. The approach accepts the dominant societal values and norms and are interestedly primarily in how they are actually taught in schools. The third one is the transmission and reproduction of dominant values and beliefs via the hidden curriculum is both acknowledged and accepted as a positive function of the schooling process. Nevertheless, while the content of what transmitted through certain classroom practices is analyzed, the political and economic interests such as beliefs and values legitimized are taken for granted. Another thing is that the traditionalists provide a theoretical service in illuminating how certain necessary societal values get tacitly transmitted via the curriculum. And the traditionalists, they do not question the underlying logic that gives shape to the institutionalized relationship among power, knowledge, and classroom control. So the second approach is the liberal. The liberal perspective rejects most top to bottom models of pedagogy. Students are viewed simply as passive role bearers and recipients of knowledge. Knowledge is viewed as something to be learned rather than critically engaged. And students are viewed also as simply as passive role bearers and recipients of knowledge. Sorry, they're just the same. Okay, the liberal approach. The core of the liberal problematic is the question of how meaning gets produced in the classroom. By considering knowledge a social construction, liberal critics have focused their research on the variety of ways by which knowledge gets arbitrarily mediated and negotiated within the classroom settings. Um, there is an empirical research emerged in the liberal approach. The first one is the actual and hidden content of schooling. The second, the principles that govern the form and content of schooling. And the last one, the importance of seeing educational knowledge as common sense categories and typifications selected from the larger culture and society that teachers, students, and researchers use to give meanings to their actions. The liberal critic exposes and rejects aspects of hidden curriculum in which the truth claims of particular forms of knowledge and social practices are based on appeal to external forms of authority that parade under the guise of objectivity. This is according to Whitty 1974. And also the liberal theorists, they attempt to develop pedagogical models that consider the importance of intentionality, consciousness, and interpersonal relations in the construction of meaning and classroom experience. The liberal approach also give rise to the um, issues about gender studies, and the hidden curriculum in this perspective was to be found in specific practices, cultural images, or forms of discourse that reinforce gender discrimination. The school reproduced a gender code that either worked against the success of women in certain academic areas or limited their economic opportunities in the wider society. The hidden curriculum in this perspective was to be found in specific discourse and reinforced in gender discrimination. Sorry, they're just the same. To summarize, the liberal approach, the study of curriculum focuses on how the system of schooling serves to reproduce stability and cohesion in the wider society. The study of social structures is put aside for analysis of how people produce and negotiate classroom meanings. Traditional emphasis on the consensus is replaced by a radical focus on conflict. And it was also concerned with the way teachers and students create meanings. It is replaced by focus on social structures and constructions of meaning. So let's go to the third one, the radical approach. The radical approach or the radical perspective on the hidden curriculum, valuable insight in the schooling process. The first one is it explains the political function of schooling in terms of the important concepts of domination. The second one is it points to the existence of structural factors of the outside, sorry, it points to the existence of structural factors outside the immediate environment of the classroom as important forces in influencing both the day-to-day experiences and the outcomes of schooling process. In the radical perspective also, the theoretical empirical work dominates this approach is the focus on the it focuses on the political economy of schooling. The central thesis is that the social relations that characterize the production process represents the determining force in shaping the school environment. Also, the political economy position is on the hidden curriculum has had a major influence on radical theories of schooling. Its influence is derived in the part from a theoretical perspective that focus on how schools function as major socializing influences in preparing students for different places in hierarchically divided labor force. And schools now became factories for working class, and it was alleged perform an insidious but efficient job of reproducing the existing class structure and labor force. Um, To sum up, the radical perspective, only little understanding of the contradiction and social spaces that promote oppositional tendencies and behavior in schools. There is also a one-dimensional view of socialization. This is the observation of Guru. Students and teachers do not simply comply with the oppressive features of schooling, as radical critics suggest. In some cases, both resist, and teachers and students also modify school practices. The radical perspective failed to acknowledge or develop an adequate view of either consciousness, resistance, or culture. Also, this perspective has consistently ignored the existence of forms of domination other than those of class oppression. So, according to Guru, the hidden curriculum needs a redefinition. So, for him, hidden curriculum must be redefined and situated as a pedagogical concern. It must occupy essential in the development of curriculum theory. Curriculum theory and practice must integrate into its problematic a notion of critique that is capable of questioning normative assumptions underlying its logic and discourse. It must also use to analyze not only the social relations of the classroom and school, but also the structural silences and the ideological messages that shape the form and content of knowledge. It must be seen as something more than interpretative tool, buttressed with good intentions. So what are the implications of classroom practice? There is the outline of a theoretical model for it. One of the major shortcomings of the existing literature on schooling and the hidden curriculum is that it has failed to develop a dialectical conceptual framework for grasping education as a societal process. A theoretical model is needed in which schools as institutions are viewed and evaluated both in historical and contemporary terms. Schooling must be analyzed as a societal process, one in which different social groups both accept and reject the complex mediation of culture, knowledge, power that give form and meaning to the process of schooling. Power must be seen as a force that works both on people and through them. Power is not a static phenomenon, it is a process that is always in play. It must also be viewed within a theory of totality, meaning school as both an institution and a set of social practices that must be seen in its integral connection with the realities of other socioeconomic and political institutions. A relational analysis of schools becomes meaningful only if it is accompanied by an understanding of how power and knowledge link schools to the inequalities produced in the large social order. Schools must be seen as a sites of both domination and contestation. Domination is never total in this perspective, nor it is simply imposed on people. Such an insight demands that teachers examine not only the mechanisms of denomination as they exist in schools, but also how such mechanisms are reproduced and resisted by students via their own lived experiences. Teachers should critically consider questions of where such a culture comes from, whose culture is being implemented, whose interest it serves, and how it gets inscribed and sustained in school discourse and social practices. It is essential that teachers take seriously not only the beliefs and routines of the school, but also the underlying meanings and experiences that characterize students from different socioeconomic groups and which exist in various degrees of compatibility and resistance to the dominant school culture. Teacher must collectively challenge the often hidden message of powerlessness that characterize the division of labor in most schools. The separation of content, pedagogy, and evaluation to different groups of specialists not only limits teacher autonomy, it also promotes the division between mental and manual labor, albeit at a higher level. A theory of dialectical critique begins with a rejection of the official representation of reality. It means to say that teachers are expected not only to accept what is being presented to them. Negativity refers to a thorough questioning of all universals and interrogation of those received truths and social practices that go unquestioned, in schools because they are dressed in the discourse of objectivity and neutrality. And there is a saying, there is the slogan, don't think, simply follow the rules. But of course, Guru encouraged that teachers should not accept this kind of thinking. Conclusion: the hidden curriculum as it currently exists in the literature fails to provide the theoretical elements necessary to develop a critical pedagogy based on a concern with cultural struggles in the school. Also, he said that what is needed to move beyond these positions is a view of the hidden curriculum that encompasses all the ideological instances of the schooling process that silently structure and reproduce hegemonic assumptions and practices. And lastly, he said that while such an approach in and of itself will not change the larger society, it will provide the foundation for using the schools as important sites to wage counter homogenic practices. So that's it for my report. Thank you very much.